Yeah, I'm glad that's not on the recording.
Yeah.
I'm strategic. Well, we only have 40 minutes of recording, so yeah, so people are stressed. It's Tuesday. It feels like this week will never end. There's a lot to get done, and we have lots of questions. Right?
True.
Yeah. All true.
Okay, who has something specific they're concerned about? Or do you need a pep talk?
I have a specific question.
Go ahead, Chris.
So with the RDP, it talks about the you have to discuss your sample.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't, how do we know who that is?
So just to the best of your ability, imagine who that sample might be. So would it be a convenient sample? Are you thinking of randomly sampling? You know, just in general. Of course, no one is making you sign a contract with this RDP. You don't have to stick with this sample for all time, but just as a way to practice thinking about sampling. Okay.
So I have a question about the literature review or the introduction. I know it states that it's not supposed to be an exhaustive literature review, but would it be based on about, 10 to, the 8 to 10 research articles that we've looked at? And what if they're not necessarily like the leaders in the field? So I would view being able to find a handbook on, like, I don't have a handbook on like identity or, something like that would have helped to establish that better. But are there any specific thoughts about what that should look like?
Right. So it's really easy when writing these things to get trapped in lit review mode. So that's what you want to avoid. So don't just keep reading in order to beef that up, but give a sense of what you think you know about the field. And obviously it's early, and I'm sure Matt will jump in here in a minute, but I would also say that I would find it pretty surprising if everything you've done for your research reports fit perfectly into your RDP, because for some people that they've been reading more widely than others, and maybe you gotta have a
widely is a good way to put it.
Maybe you had a dud in there before you really knew, how to spot a dud ahead of time. Maybe you're still kind of figuring that out, and you have continued with some duds. That happens. And so, I think just you have to reassure the reader that you have a sense of what the research currently looks like in the field, because otherwise we can't trust your discussion of the need for the research, for instance. And we also don't have a sense of the larger conversation that you're having with the field. And so you have to have enough to make that point, if that helps. I'm hesitant to say a number, obviously. And perhaps Matt will jump in.
The fewest number you need to make a conceptual argument about why you're doing this study might be as few as 8 or 10 if you read the 8 or 10 most perfect things in the world, including a handbook chapter, which gave you the lay of the land for your field and your research question. But it might mean more, and it doesn't mean you have to read more in depth. Sometimes you can just read a very small piece of a research article enough to cite it. So you can say there have been important critiques around the use of technology in classrooms, and you can say Larry Cuban, I think it was, 1998, where he said, the title of the book is Oversold and Underused. You don't need to read the whole book to know that that's a critique of educational technology. You can still cite that as one of your things. So you can be able to cite a few more things than actually having to have read them all. So I don't want to put a number on it either. But, some of those things you're going to have read very deeply, some of them not. You're just going to use it to make a quick point.
So we don't need to make an annotated bibliography for everything that we cite?
Oh, God, no.
Nope, your annotated bibliography is just the 8 things that you read in depth.
So this is, this aspect of the RDP that you're working on is really a research proposal. And so, thinking of how you've looked at the article critiques where there's a conceptual frame, they're identifying the need, they're citing relevant research, they're talking about sampling, they have a method. Those are the kind of things that you're trying to write in there. So that's different from some of the other work that you've been doing as you are getting exposed to the field in ProSeminar. So.
But you have read other articles for your article critiques that have lit reviews, and you have critiqued them in terms of their conceptual frameworks, what a good lit review should do. And you've read 8 articles yourself, all have lit reviews, so you should have seen some good models for what a lit review should look like. We don't expect yours to be that good. You'll have read less, and you're a first-year student, but you get an idea what's supposed to do, right? You start with a big picture, and you kind of narrow it down to why I'm looking at this question, because this identifies a gap in the literature, and here's why I want to investigate this question. But you kind of have to take readers from the big overall picture to the question that you're working on, with a few references along the way.
Other questions about that, you guys, or does that clarify it?
It clarifies.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions you have?
I have a somewhat not class-related question, but I know that we have to register for our fall classes we have to let Ayondala know by Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a discussion set up with she had told us to talk to our advisors, and I have a meeting set up with my advisor, but he said, I'm not really sure what you're supposed to take. You should find out. So we're supposed to take 932 in the fall, right? That's usually what.
Yeah, I don't know why she said talk to your advisor, but whenever you're really unsure about that, you can also email Karen.
Okay.
She's sort of the other point person for these kind of programmatical questions. But yeah, as far as I know, Matt, I don't know. Matt and I don't really.
Well, Ayondala's telling you to do that because she's not.
Right.
She shouldn't be making any decisions like that whatsoever. But I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be taking 932. And your advisors probably haven't. I mean, it's up to them what you should be taking. There may be a couple students who don't take it because I think Carl, for example, is trying to get out of it.
No, I think
not
Brad.
Carl. I'm sorry, Brad. Yeah, Brad's trying to get out of it. So I guess that's why you might want to talk to your advisor if there's a reason why that course doesn't work for you. But sign up for 932. That's what I say.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I have another kind of just broad, generic question. I guess the thing that I'm noticing when I'm trying to identify the model when we're doing article critiques is that every resource that I find calls it something different.
Mm-hmm.
Like one will call it a cross-sectional design and another will say that it's a descriptive design with cross-sectional data collection. Or, it's just every place I go calls it something different. Is there some common source or reliable source where there's a common language, or is that just the field? Is that just the way it is?
Yeah, I think that there are slight differences in the way that people describe them. Especially, I think I've noticed it a lot when you're moving from different sort of traditions of research. So like between psychology and sociology, as they filter into the sort of applied stuff that we do, sometimes they use slightly different terminology. I don't know, Remler and Van Ryzen obviously would be one source for us because we're sharing that in common here. So you can use that. Anything else you want to add, Matt?
No, I think you're basically right, Chris, that there's going to be different names, and that's because the names sort of change over time, but it's also we have some people from education and some people from sociology and some different terms in psychology, and they're all different names for the same thing. And as long as you pick a name and say what you mean by that, I think you're going to be okay. There's no wrong answer per se. There's no right answer that we're looking for. That is that
Okay.
you don't have to call one particular thing.
I feel like I keep going down the rabbit hole because I'll find one. It'll lead me to something, which will lead me to something, and it's like an hour later, and I haven't made any forward progress.
I think the thing is, this is for your article critique, right?
Yeah,
So when you're trying to describe it, I think the thing to remember is that you want to tell us what you decided the design is, or maybe they actually identify it in the article. But you want to offer some evidence of that gels, and then I think then you want to warrant that evidence, basically. So going back to the idea of the warranting. So it's not just like you say, this is what it is, and then stop there. You want to describe that and connect what it is with the evidence and because, therefore, whatever.
Okay.
So something I've noticed with 930 students the last couple times that because you're grappling with new ideas and terminology, sometimes it's easy, like you're working so hard to identify it, you forget to take that next step to explain it. And like, okay, so you've identified it, you've offered me evidence, now explain how those two things work together. So how does that evidence prove what you said it is? So if you just do those three things, here's what it is, here's the evidence, here's how that evidence proves it is what it is, then you should be fine.
Okay.
When I get stuck on this stuff, I always go back to my stance, evidence, and warrant because it is very clear and it kind of helps. It feels like my floaties in the deep end of the pool, I guess. Other questions you guys have?
Well, I came with a list, but I don't want to dominate.
Just keep them going. Keep
All right.
them going.
Everybody else probably has the same questions you do. So,
Well, I'm realizing it's been a few weeks now, and all I've been focusing on is just coursework. And I'm wondering what else should I have been doing at this point in the summer. Like, I have not talked with my advisor since on campus. Or is there anything else that I should be worried about right at this moment?
my answer would be, I think it's fine to focus on coursework for now, and obviously keep it on your radar. And there'll be a bit of a gap when we end, and when the fall semester starts, that might be a good time to check back in, to say, here's how my semester went, unless there's something pressing. So I think, obviously don't completely forget that you have to do other things, but it's a lot of work right now.
Yeah.
I
know
I kind of want to just give you permission to focus on. It's okay. Like, it's just like sometimes it's just survival. If that's all you can get done, that's all you get done.
I know my advisor gave me an August 1 deadline of committee, and I have to have one formed by then.
Oh. Wow.
So yeah, I guess that's maybe I'm just realizing that's probably something I should get started on.
Well, if you have
like
that external deadline, you probably would like to meet it, or you could discuss with your advisor that, that maybe you need a little bit more time for that. So that's reasonable too.
Okay, Chris, what's your next question?
Can you explain one more time theoretical framework to me? The difference between theoretical framework and conceptual framework? I think I'm just constantly mixing the two.
Yeah, so they're definitely used interchangeably by people. I think that I would also say that sometimes conceptual frameworks also include theoretical aspects to them so that they're discussing some kind of theory. But in terms of conceptual framework, it's basically trying to situate the study in terms of the theory and also describing the phenomenon of interest in some way. And so that's why a lot of times it has theory in it, because it's trying to describe it. And really it's letting the reader know how the researcher is approaching everything that happens in the study, from the theory that they're using to drive their questions, to the questions themselves, to the methodological approach. All of that is to do with the way that they're conceptualizing the entire study. Matt, do you want to add? I don't want to lead anybody astray.
Are we asking for you to treat those differently somewhere? Where's this question coming from?
So I think the question is coming
article.
from when Carrie discussed theory with a capital T and a little t, right? Is that where it's coming from? Because I keep hearing it and people are referring to that.
It's in the article critique.
Yeah, they call it conceptual frame, right? But they don't ever say theoretical frame in those questions.
Well, we must, because I think he's asking about.
Well, because like A1 is critique the author's conceptual frame, and then A3 is how effectively does the author study relevant theory or connect relevant theory to prior research, which
Right.
I would interpret it as theoretical framework.
Okay. I see. I'm trying to get the questions up.
So I was struggling with that too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is right, but in my mind, the way I made it make sense was that the first question you would be looking at more how the author introduces the topic of her research, whether it's using theory or however that happens. You know what I mean? And then, whereas the theory and research or relevant prior research would be more of like a literature review.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so the conceptual framework basically means the argument, the rationale from big to small about why we're doing this study.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes elements of theory, right? So according to theory, if people do this, they should do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or behaviorism says people do this, but constructivist approaches says something different. So you have one theory predicts one thing, another theory says another thing. So a conceptual framework or argument will have elements of theory in it. So question 3, when we ask about tying to the relevant theory, we're asking about specific parts of the argument. So not the whole argument. So the argument, the conceptual framework, has theory in it, but it has some other parts. So the argument may have to do, we hope, has a lot to do with theory, but it may have to do with some parts of practice, right? It may have some practical concerns. It may have to do with replicating some other work, and not necessarily a theoretical issue. But when we get to question 3, we're being more specific about how is this tied to relevant theory and prior research. So not all parts of the argument are important here for question 3. But Andrea's right. Sometimes conceptual framework and theoretical framework are two different things. But for the most part, we will use them sometimes interchangeably. But technically, conceptual framework is a superset of theoretical framework.
Mm-hmm. And I think Matt's point too about that they might discuss multiple theories, but then they hone in on one is where you really see the difference between that. It doesn't happen every time. And yeah, sometimes it has to do with just how they're conceptualizing a phenomenon too. So. Other questions? A lot of people have that question, so
I think that's probably the one that we all got the same
yeah.
feedback on. So, is the lit review, so going back to kind of what Carmen said, where the conceptual framework is supposed to introduce it. So one of the comments that Carrie made on mine was, I don't mind sharing this, but he says, at issue for this question is whether the framework is an effective way to organize the introduction. So if they go into detail in the literature, but they don't actually mention something in their introduction of a topic, that's not good, right? If that's an important concept. Like they should be bringing up relevant points as to why something that they're looking at is relevant in their conceptual framework, not just in their relevant literature, or in the introduction rather. Is that?
I would say that sometimes it's really hard for us to say like, yeah, it should be here, it should be there, but it should be logically progressing.
Okay.
So you can, I want to agree with Andrea saying this is up to you. This is a critique. You can, you can say one thing and I can say something different.
Okay.
But say we want to talk about the transition from MySpace to Facebook. I could frame this as my framework might be that this is about evolving technologies. Facebook won because it had better use of technology and affordances of technology. Now, you could critique that and say, you have framed this issue wrong. This is not about technology. A better framework would be talking about social networks and about the need for people to connect. So the right theoretical framework is around social networks, not about technology.
Okay.
So that case, you're saying the frame is wrong. You're looking at the issue wrong. That's what the framework is about.
Okay, that helps.
But
Thanks.
even if we agree about my framework, about how technology has changed and we got better tools and better buttons and all that kind of stuff, you could say, even with my right framework, I didn't review the right literature. I'm framing it the right way, but I missed some key literature.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Other questions? Do you hear my dog whining? My dog has a question. He wants to go outside. Do you have another one, Chris?
Yeah. This is just a low level, just basic one. So I was looking at our wow, I cannot think of the word right now. I want to say rubric. Oh my gosh, the thing for the course.
Okay, go ahead.
Website.
Syllabus. Wow. Brain's fried.
Syllabus.
Yes. And it says that 20% of our grade is based upon our discussion board discussion. And I'm just wondering, how are we doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you guys are doing great. Yeah, I probably should give you some more specific feedback. Would you like that?
Well, just knowing if we're like way off base, like we're gonna get a 0 on that part or what? No.
Nope. You're doing great. Keep going. I can write you. I meant to last week and I just got behind. So I'll write you guys some specific feedback about how you're doing. So thank you for the reminder.
That's it. That's my list.
Okay.
Well, I was looking at the syllabus too. And it says that we are 5, I don't know how much percent of our grade is, or 5 article critiques.
Mm-hmm.
But that first one we never got a grade on because it was just critiquing previous year's critiques.
Yeah, that's right. We all got 100. Basically is how it's going to work at the end. You're just going to have to trust us that we're all going to, we're going to weight this all and you'll trust in your final grade. That I think how we did that in the past is you're all going to get 100 on that one.
Okay.
I said that, your low grades on like article critique 3, you have to trust that it's all going to work out in the wash. And one of the ways we make it come out in the wash is like your first one is 100. So don't worry, it's all going to work out.
Okay.
Carmen's not worried because her group is the only one that got them right. So in that first one.
Other questions?
I know I was chatting with Carl this morning, and he and I both kind of had the same thought that our discussion post might be a little lighter this week because we have so much other work to do. So I know that's
Mine are definitely of a lower quality.
That's okay, because it's like the least of your concerns.
Right.
So, and some of those questions were supposed to be kind of easier to think about, hopefully. Like, are you quantitative or qualitative, that question? Where do you see yourself on the spectrum? Or the blank sheet test one? Those aren't supposed to be killer. You can't really say a lot about the blank sheet test anyway, so.
You could say my sheet was blank.
Yeah, part of it. It's just to sort of make sure that you're engaging with the text and with each other. So that
I'm actually really enjoying. I'm really enjoying the
You guys
discussion.
are doing a
forum.
really good job on those discussion boards. It's been really fun for me to read them. So.
I need to turn off my email notification though.
Yes.
Like 5,000 emails.
Yeah.
I get to work on Monday, and I have like 200 new emails in my inbox.
So you guys,
Like, I'll do it
Piazza
later.
has an iPad app too that's really nice, and it'll just show you the little counts on the. I love the Piazza iPad app, for the record. Other questions. Oh, we've got 10 minutes. Someday they'll upgrade my account. I don't know I do not know what's happening with that.
So I just got an email from John Bell. I think I know how to do it. So
Okay, good. We'll figure it out before Thursday, maybe. You can do it. You're gonna make it. You're gonna survive.
I really like the inspirational quotes and the things that you guys are sending us.
Thank you for the effort.
Yes.
We're having a lot of fun going through my LOL grad school posts. It's actually really hard to find funny ones that are amusing, but not also completely depressing. a lot of really cynical humor around grad school.
So, Andrea, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
The audio interviews that we did last week, what will that feedback look like? I'm thinking about it because we're going into the digital storytelling that is due next week. What will that feedback look like? Is it just a matter of completing it or doing it? Because I know some of the examples of digital storytelling that we have for this week. Just wondering what that might look like or the expectation on that.
So are you asking about how you're going to be evaluated on your motivation podcast or how you're going to be evaluated on the digital storytelling project, or are you talking about both?
I would say both. Are there similarities as far as looking at them or what are the differences?
I will defer to Matt Kaler because I do not do the feedback on those things.
I'm sorry, I was ordering Zoom for us. What was the question?
How should they be, what should they be prioritizing in terms of their audio motivation podcast and their digital storytelling in terms of like what they'll be evaluated on?
Well, let's see what the assignment says. I haven't looked at this in 2 years, so.
I mean, obviously, I will vamp while he does that. So I will say that for the audio podcast, that you're really a lot of it is gonna be that you have demonstrated a motivational construct and that you've identified that through the way that you're editing and then also writing around it. So make sure that you're doing those things. So that is intended to be discussing some aspect of motivation, right? And so if your audio podcast doesn't do that, then that's gonna be the biggest issue. So you just kind of want to stay focused.
Andrea graded these 2 years ago.
I did?
So Andrea's going to dust off the rubric from 2 years ago and give you some quick feedback about what the major grading categories were.
Oh. See, I don't even remember this. How funny. Okay, so for the audio interview or the digital storytelling?
I mean, we could. Oh, you
I
asking
think
me?
both, but
I totally don't even remember. Okay, so
well, regardless of who did it, we'll find what we.
yeah. I remember last time discussing basically the issues of when you get down to what you're posting. So that it's been edited. That's like number one that, you know, we're going to, well, not number one, but that's one obvious thing to look at. It should have major themes tied to motivation so that they're not talking about other aspects. You want to be highlighting that evidence from your interviews. So as it says on the assignment page, don't just replay your interview. It should probably be longer than 3 to 5 minutes. And so the way that you edit and the choices that you make should be demonstrating motivation. So that is really important. And then in terms of your summary, you want to address the role of the technology in that summary. So thinking through how the technology might have changed it if you had just interviewed the person and written it up. So those are the really main thrusts, that the editing reflects a motivational concept and that you're highlighting the important aspects of motivation in your audio and that your written part reflects on the role of technology.
All right, I just sent the rubric to everybody.
Thank you.
And the digital storytelling, we need that rubric too?
Yes, please.
And this does similar things where your written aspect of the digital storytelling part needs to reflect on the role of the technology. And that that whatever you're producing really gives someone who's unfamiliar with you an understanding of what your research interest is in a way that is compelling and interesting.
All right, sent. Now with a whole lot of explanation, so the people who weren't in the Zoom are probably wondering why they're just getting the rubric sent to them blindly.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it bad? So I'm working on my RDP.
Mm-hmm.
Should we refrain from searching for examples of draft research proposals online? Or, I mean, because I kind of just wanted to see an example.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
You might just get bad ones.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm basically unable to produce anything unless I know an example of what I'm producing. So
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think
my
it's a terrible
problem.
idea to know like what one looks like. But I'd be cautious about overgeneralizing from the example.
Right. Okay.
Other than format and tone.
Right.
To
Okay.
worry that you're copying a bad one. So
Okay, thanks.
So sample widely then if you do that. So you look at 3, 4, 5, so you can figure out what the form is and not rely too heavily on one that may have some serious flaws in it.
Okay.
I would, you can probably check other EPET students' websites for that, because if a lot of them have taken Carrie's 930 and had to do this. So they might have them posted on their website somewhere.
Okay, cool.
So that might be another, again, you don't have any quality controls on that, but at least you'll get a sense of what other people turned in for the same idea.
Did you graded those right for 930?
Yes, I did. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Did Spencer do well?
Yes.
All right, so I would suggest you can find
I'm
Spencer
going to send him a
Greenhow.
little tweet.
Yeah.
Spencer.
If he has it on his website. I don't know if he does or not.
Yeah, Spencer would share with you. We'll throw Spencer out there. He's going to be like, why am I getting a million emails from them?
Beyond that, I don't want to volunteer anyone else.
Yeah. I bet Spencer does have it on his website.
I'm checking right now.
Other questions?
We got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe he doesn't have them on here. He'll
I
share
don't-
them.
Yeah, I can't see it clearly.